Welcome to the podcast. It's Friday, a couple days late because both Rod and I have been busy this week reporting on the news everywhere else. We're going to talk some NASCAR. Rod Mullins is joining us here on the podcast, and we'll start with last weekend, busy weekend in NASCAR and NHRA. We'll start with NASCAR and Pocono, and getting back into a super speedway. And Chase Briscoe getting his his first win of the season, right?
Yeah, first win of the season, first win under Joe Gibbs Racing this
Yeah,
season. So it was a big
yes.
win for him. So
Take us into that. How did he do it, and how did it all go down?
well, he said early on at the beginning of this race, he felt like the car was good. He felt like that they actually had a car that was good enough to make it through the race. And you kind of start thinking, is that sort of driver mumbo jumbo for saying, well, we just got to wait and see what happens? And really, he was right. He had a good car that made it. Matter of fact, he led 72 of 160 laps, and while leading the final 34, the big thing was, and we've talked about this many times before when we do these podcasts, especially when we come to summertime, we talk about Pocono or Michigan or something of that nature, fuel consumption. And that's what it all came down to. And fuel consumption made the difference. And he beat his teammate, Denny Hamlin. So Denny Hamlin wasn't the favorite driver that got beat this time. So, I mean, it was Chase Briscoe that won the thing. But still, he crossed the finish line at 0.682 seconds ahead of Hamlin. But he secures a spot in the playoffs. And that kind of gives a little bit more legitimacy, let's say that, to what we were talking about the week before, and that was Shane Van Gisbergen, who won the road course race. And then Richard Petty was on the soapbox about, I don't think it's fair that somebody, mired 20 or 30th in the points or something should have a chance at getting into the playoffs. Well, to me, I think it's just as, equal an opportunity for anybody. If they get a win, they deserve a chance at the playoffs. And it forces some of these teams to raise their standards or raise their plans of what they're going to do, and they have to become more competitive as the season goes on in order for them to stay in any kind of position. But Chase Briscoe, this win, it was the third of his career. He had previously earned a season best 4 poles and led in 8 races, had led laps in 8 races, but altogether, he said it was a matter of more than anything else, there was a lot of pressure on him. But I think what he didn't say was he was going to have a lot of patience in winning this race, and that's what it took. And he had to depend on that crew chief sitting on top of the box to tell him, we've got enough fuel to make it the rest of the way. And sure enough, they did.
Denny Hamlin has a lot of success at this track. You mentioned he finished second. His 10th second place finish at Pocono. He's won the race 7 times.
Yeah.
He might want this one. If he's getting a Hall of Fame, he might want a picture of him from Pocono because
Yeah.
I mean, that's an amazing record for a guy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some of the other drivers in there that have won at Pocono, but not as many times as Denny Hamlin. And I think Denny Hamlin was, pretty confident going into this race too that, they would have a good race. And I'm not taking anything away from them. They did have a good race. They had a good race at Pocono, but teammate kept it within the Joe Gibbs Racing stable, so to speak. But yeah, it's if he'd won, I think that would have put him all time. I think top of the list is what it would have done, because I think there's been some other drivers kind of in between there that have won some other race events there at Pocono, but he's the leader. He's the leader of that. That would have put him ahead even more by all time winning there at Pocono.
It kind of reminds me of the record of Jack Nicklaus in golf majors. Not only winning 18 of them, but finishing second, something like 20 sometimes. It's amazing to win that many races at Pocono, but then to finish second 10 more times. What you're as you pointed out here, he was just less than 7/10 of a second out of first in this one. I'm reading about how Ryan Blaney finished third. He started at the back of the field. Considering how hot it was, this next thing I'm going to bring up, his cool suit was malfunctioning for more than 100 laps. So, 250 miles of this race, he had a malfunctioning cool suit in the middle of the summer. I'm a distance runner, Ron. I run every day. This is not a good time to have a malfunctioning cool suit if you're riding around in a NASCAR.
It's like having a Volkswagen that has no air conditioning in it. I mean, the old Volkswagens, because when they didn't have air conditioning, the heat just poured through the car because you're sitting on top of the exhaust, and that's what gives you the heat, and it works that air conditioner. And you had to be well. You had to be able to afford an air conditioner in a Volkswagen in the old ones back in the old days, but now that's been taken care of. Yeah, I really feel bad for him that cool suit gave out. One of the things that I was talking to somebody down at Bristol on Tuesday with the big baseball announcement and so forth of where they stand. I was talking to Blooper, the guy that plays Blooper for the games and so forth, and I told him, I said, you really need a cool suit in there. He said, wouldn't make any difference. He said, it's that hot. And he was there that morning. I think we got down there at about 9 o'clock, and the, the, the air was just so thick with the humidity and so forth. I don't see how he and Mr. Red were making it in that hot temperature down there at Bristol, especially in that infield where that pavement just draws in so much heat and sunlight. But in Ryan Blaney's case, after the race was over with, they get him out of the car. He sits down beside of the car, and I think they have to pump him with some fluids after that to kind of get him back into shape. But yeah, this is one of the things of these kind of races. You just hate to see something go wrong to where that cool suit, especially blowing cold air, also through the mask at the top or there at the near the top, coming into the face mask to keep you cool. I just couldn't imagine that. I mean, if you're claustrophobic to 1 degree, think of being claustrophobic and then burning up and being like in an oven at the same time. It's kind of hard to imagine, but it's a situation I wouldn't want to be into.
Yeah, I do a 3.1 mile run every day. This week's been really interesting, but it's about 30 minutes. It's not a couple hours in a car that and with extra heat coming in from being in the car. And also I carry a bottle of water around with me that I don't drink. I just pour on my head every so often
Right.
to try to cool down, and it's still it's almost unbearable. I can only sympathize. I mean, that's terrible for Blaney to get it fixed for next time, and let's not have it happen again.
Yep.
uh, as far as that goes, we'll talk about the race coming up in Atlanta later on the show. Let's go over to NHRA though. This weekend was the Virginia Motorsports Park, the Virginia Nationals, and so take us into what happened this weekend there in the Richmond area.
Well, they had a lot of things going on with this one, and I have to say that probably more than anything, Austin Prock and John Force Racing needed the jump and the boost in the arm that they got at this race, because he ended up winning and claiming his second consecutive victory at Victory Motorsports Park. All of this on the almost 1 year anniversary, or right at the 1 year anniversary, of John Force having that terrible wreck at Richmond there at Dinwiddie. And when this happened, it threw the NHRA into a state of chaos almost. I know we had a lot of hits when people were talking about John Force, and everything else, and trying to find out his status. And everything was so closely guarded. Well, let me tell you, he was out in force on the weekend, pardon the pun, and he's there in victory lane with his man, Austin Prock, and they win. He wins a Wally, and it's kind of like a little bit of redemption. Things weren't as good for Brittany Force, though, in this whole thing. She kind of bowed out, but still, it was a thing of kind of facing some demons and some ghosts, especially for this John Force Racing team. But, I really have to say this was probably one of the big races that a lot of people were looking at and had circled on their calendar to find out how John Force Racing was going to react, or how they were going to perform when they got to Richmond this coming weekend.
Yeah, the heat was an issue there too. I'm reading the comment from one of the racers, Gage Herrera, about the track being 150 degrees
Yeah.
with the thermometers. They're saying I can identify with that, and to some degree. I mean, hot track anyway, no matter what time of year you're doing. I was at a Atlanta Braves baseball game back in the 90s, and it was one of those days where it was a Sunday day game, and we had great seats, almost too good of seats as it turns out, 2 rows behind home plate, right there in the sun. And I actually taped the game, went back and watched it later. The air temperature was 98 degrees, but the TV broadcast had a thermometer somewhere, in the vicinity of where we were sitting actually that showed it being 135 on the field. And I
Whoa.
mean, that's just crazy to, but and then we were just sitting there. Again, these people are competing, so 150-degree track is it's. I'll agree with Herrera. Just insane, he said, to have to put up with those conditions, but tough for everybody out there.
Yeah, also have to mention in there too, besides Herrera winning his race in the pro stock and the motorcycle, you also had Sean Langdon, who crossed the finish line ahead of Justin Ashley. He won in the final round result, but it was under review by officials with NHRA, and they finally did end up ruling that Langdon was going to be eliminated out of that he was going to be penalized for it. So they've got it straightened out, and Sean Langdon with Coletta Racing is now looking at the possibility of trying to get things back on the norm as they go to Norwalk this coming weekend. So it was a bad break for them because they were really looking for some big things at this race. They did well at Bristol. I thought they did really well at Bristol coming through the pack. And then, of course, Tony Stewart had the really great race at Bristol that weekend. Tony Stewart kind of there this past weekend, but not as much success as he had at Bristol that weekend. So we saw a lot of different changes here with the way things were, especially up at there at Virginia, at the Virginia Nationals. So, we kind of see, John Force Racing kind of getting back to it. And to beat all, Austin Prock defeated his fellow teammate, Jack Beckman, who drives now in place of John Force on that peak antifreeze car. So it was fun all the way around, this past weekend up there at Richmond.
Let's switch gears, go off the track, and Rod, you pointed out a interesting interview the Steve Phelps did with CNBC, NASCAR Commissioner Steve Phelps, where he addressed quite a few issues going on in NASCAR right now. Where do you want to start? There's a lot to pick apart here with what Phelps had to say about NASCAR, the Amazon TV deal, and some competition things.
Well, I really don't know where to start either, except for the fact it's almost as if the article, in one sense, kind of asserts him. He asserts himself as the all knowing commissioner and the all purpose commissioner out of this. And he says we're structured kind of differently. And I would agree with that. They're structured differently than the ball and stick, sports that are out there and so forth. He's talking about Roger Goodell having 32 owners, in the NFL and having to deal with that. And that's who he reports to. Well, in essence, it's like Phelps doesn't report to anybody. Phelps is his own person. And even though these race teams may say something about it, they really don't have an ear for anybody to listen to. I mean, it may come down the pike eventually, but, it's like Phelps is just there. It's almost like he is the crown. He is the figurehead of this sport, and he doesn't listen to all the other people that's down below. But you go on with something else and you start talking about it. He's talking about I'm kind of confused why he said this. He said in a quote, as I look at the article a little bit more, they asked him about the Michael Jordan lawsuit. And his comment was, the question was put to him about it, talk about it. So he says, so the suit was brought by 2311, which is the company that's the majority owner is Michael Jordan, and talking about Denny Hamlin being a very successful driver. But he says, I'm not really sure why they decided to, file a suit against NASCAR. It's right in front of you. I mean, it's, they claim he's monopolistic, or at least NASCAR is monopolistic about this whole thing. And he just said that, hey, we don't believe it's an antitrust case. And an even more compelling comment that comes out of this is the fact that it's almost as if he doesn't know that there is a team called Front Row Motorsports out of this whole thing. He kind of draws this attention. He says in the quote, and there's another team called Front Row that's also partnered with him on this suit. Like, we don't know who Front Row Motorsports is, and anybody that follows the sport should know who Front Row Motorsports is. They are in cahoots with this 2311, lawsuit against NASCAR. he says we don't believe it's an antitrust case. So of course they're going to believe it's not an antitrust case, and he kind of answers to the comment of, well, the guy interviewing him says they call you monopolistic, or they call it monopolistic, and he says, and I would say on that to the viewers and everything that there's been a significant increase in revenue that the team's got over a period of time. And yes, you have to admit that. As he goes down through here, it was an increase of 73%. And he says that's a significant increase. But there's other things that's not being addressed, I think, right now, and he doesn't want to talk about them. And I guess for fear of, the lawsuit or something like that taking another turn. But this lawsuit is going to happen in December. There's no other way around it. I don't think NASCAR, unless NASCAR finally decides before the December date in this trial, unless they want to just say, okay, you win, you pull back, let's make an agreement about this. I think Michael Jordan and company, they're in for the fight. They're in for the long haul. They're down in the trenches, and they're pulling out all the stops in order for them to be able to prove that this is not being controlled in the way that they feel it ought to be controlled in.
You mentioned there's a lot there to unpack, and I'll start with, okay, so Phelps says, yeah, I'm not like in the stick and ball sports. I'm not the commissioner who answers to the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan was an owner
Right.
in the NBA for a long time, which does operate a different system where the owners actually hire the commissioner. The commissioner works for the owners. Um, one thing Phelps conceded in that comment there about the lawsuit was we need healthy racing teams to have better racing. What the teams who were suing here say is we can't be healthy if
Yeah.
we don't get more access to money and more access to the money that NASCAR generates as a sport. And it's not like Phelps doesn't answer to anybody. He answers to, instead of 32 owners or 30 owners in MLB, he answers to two people. It's a
Mm-hmm.
privately NASCAR is privately family owned,
Right.
and yeah, then the teams are under that structure. So yeah, that lawsuit's going to be something, and I don't know that it's going to be quickly resolved either. There's so
Right.
many issues involved, and it'll from a now just legal eagle standpoint, is it a judge trial? Is it a jury trial? I'm sure they'll go for a jury. You'll have to the jurors will have to be educated to the nuances of, I mean, high dollar sport, and a high dollar sport that's different than probably most people are used to. I mean, this is not it's not easy for either side here, to be honest. And I think there's a lot of pressure going to be on both sides to try to figure out a way to settle this before it goes to 12 people who may or may not know the nuances of big business like this. But yeah, I mean, if worst comes to worst, there's a trial, and then we'll have a few weeks of a trial, probably leading right into Daytona, which will not be
Right.
a comfortable situation for anybody.
No, it won't. And we've talked about, and I guess we kind of, in one way, gang up on the side at least of NASCAR and look at it from that standpoint of, yeah, to one degree or another, it is monopolistic, or it does things a certain way different than the stick and ball sports and so forth. But there is a problem also with the teams right now, and I don't know if it's a thing of they fear of retribution, if they fear that the truth will finally come out. Michael Jordan in their defense is wanting to go, and they are asking. Well, Formula One is one of the programs they're asking, and they are also asking some of the NASCAR teams to open their books and let people see what the numbers really are. And I think some of them are going to say, "Hey, look how much is being spent here. Look at this. This is outrageous." Or why aren't they being able to be successful with this amount of money and so forth in place here? What is not working about this? It's kind of like those same arguments you might throw out there in regard to Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, how much money has Jerry Jones went out on the limb for about certain things? And I'm not a Cowboys fan, but how much money has he went out on the limb for in grabbing a player who has been lackluster and not performed the way that they had hoped to, or injury takes place, as in the case of Dak Prescott and so forth. But it's like, where's the money going? And some of the teams, if they reveal, I think some of them, if they do reveal what's there on the books, there's one thing I feel that NASCAR might do. NASCAR might say, hey, we'll retaliate. We'll do something else. You're making it look bad on us, or whatever the situation may be. That's kind of what I'm thinking might happen.
I would be careful if I was NASCAR, though. The teams can just fold. I mean,
Yeah. Mhm.
you're not going to hear of the Cincinnati Bengals or the San Francisco Giants, Golden State Warriors saying, "Yeah, we're not going to be a team anymore. We just give up. We can't make
Yeah.
any money. We're going to give up." But a NASCAR team can just say, "We won't race anymore." And so I mean that's what's different too. And I mean money issues come up though in all the sports. I'm trying to think. Baseball, I think, is a year and a half away from its collective bargaining agreement between the owners, the MLB, and the MLBPA, the Players Association, being up. And there's talk about a possible lockout coming up after the 2026 season. It always comes up. The unions say, "Open your books. We want to see where all the money's going in and where it goes out." And then then it gets to, should we count parking money, or should we count concession money? How much of it should we count? I mean, all those, it comes up in every sport.
Yeah, it does.
But
Well,
the difference being the Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, NFL, they have
mm,
unions, and there's no equivalent in NASCAR. I mean,
right.
if these NASCAR teams band together and try to form a union, I'm sure the France family would say, "Yeah, we're done."
Well, that's what Big Bill wanted to do in the first place when it was first mentioned, probably back in the 50s, when the first thing started being organized about the possibility of, hey, we're going to have a union. And Big Bill said, the end is near. If that happens, he says, I'll shut the whole thing down, is what I'll do, because we won't have unions in this whole thing. So that was a telltale sign. Another thing that kind of concerned me, all this interview comes out at a time where we get the news today. I got it really actually late last night, but today, Rick Ware Racing has been sold in NASCAR. So you've got Spire Motorsports getting ready to make a purchase there. That's actually going to take, we had talked about this thing of the the charters and so forth with Legacy. Legacy supposedly had let them, or was going to get something of a charter number back or a charter back and so forth, if what they wanted to do with it if they expanded to, say, 3 teams for next year. And there was a point of controversy over it. It was even going to court. And now Rick Ware Racing is out of the picture. They are supposedly sold to Spire Motorsports. So everything is just up in the air right now. And then again, you're talking about the baseball thing coming up. They certainly aren't looking at it like it's going to be a strike coming up in August down at Bristol. I mean, they're going all out, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about too today was all the money being spent, and Major League Baseball is doing a lot of this, but the track is also doing some things too. I pulled in at the racetrack the other day for this big announcement. They were talking about where they stand and so forth on being able to make it. And I had a chance to talk to Murray Cook, who is based in Roanoke. He lives in Roanoke, but he's also a member of the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and he's also on MLB, Major League Baseball's big list of people who design fields and handles things about fields and so forth. And he and I were talking about it. And he says, yeah, we're getting there. It's going to be a nonstop effort. He, as a matter of fact, moved from Roanoke temporarily to Bristol to oversee all this stuff. But when I came into the track the other day, the pit lanes, the pit walls are gone in the infield. They have replaced totally all of those. And so I had a chance to ask Murray what's going on. I said, the Goodyear building's been tore down and everything. And what's going to happen about that? And are there going to be a portable building, something that can be moved back and forth, a little bit more to give some room down here in the infield? And he says, nope, they're going to build it back after the baseball game is over with. They're going to rebuild this building, so to speak, and then they are also going to rebuild the pit wall. So we kind of started thinking about it. I said that would be easy to just go and fix the pit walls back, put a big steel metal, piece of beam in there, and then concrete, just slip them back down in there. He said, no, we can't do that. It's got to be concrete. It's got to be concrete all the way through. They can't have anything that's even a sign of movable out of that whole thing for safety reasons. But I was really impressed with what they're doing so far. And yeah, I got a little safety hat. I got a safety hat from it looks like a batting hat from Speedway for the Speedway Classic. And so hey, it's the excitement is running wild down there. I mean, it's people are really looking forward to this thing, especially at Bristol Motor Speedway. And it may not be on everybody's favorites list of watching Fox or anything like that, but some of the NASCAR drivers, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was in New York, and they were promoting the Speedway Classic there and what's going to be taking place in Bristol the first part of August. So they're getting some really big attention right now over this.
It's just you're talking about all that construction work going on
Yeah.
that most people won't even think about when they get there or they're
Yeah.
watching on TV, whatever. Okay, but then the teardown and getting ready for September 13th.
Right.
That's not a lot of time. That's what,
That's
six
right.
weeks, not even six
Yep.
weeks. Good luck.
Well,
That's a lot.
here's one for you. This is what got me. I was surprised. I thought, okay, they're not going to have to do a major refitting or revamping or anything in the field. And I was talking to Murray Cook, and I told him, I said, I'm looking out here at the infield. I know y'all have got it marked out and everything. Yeah, we've had to raise the infield at least 4 feet. We've had to raise all that down there in the infield, not the baseball infield itself, but
Yeah.
we're talking about the track infield. They've
Yeah.
had to raise it 4 feet up. They're also going to have to bring in special lighting from Musco Lighting. They're going to come in and do some things. They were talking about the press box down there. The press box is going to hold 40 members of the press. Now I don't know how that right now it's 40. I asked someone with Bristol Motor Speedway. I said, "Well, is there any chance anybody's going to go in the suites up there and be able to watch it or anything like that, or in the regular media thing up there around the turns?" Nope. This is all going to be taking place down on the field, and then outside the track, it's almost going to be like a country fair type, kind of atmosphere out there. Ferris wheel. There's going to have a legacy thing for Atlanta, legacy thing for Cincinnati. It's going to be a big deal. It's bigger than I dreamed when they first made the announcement here almost a year ago. I'm just totally in shock.
Have you heard any numbers of how many people they expect to be there, anything like that?
Not heard anything right now as numbers. I mean, I know they're going to they're going to have so many people, of course, in the turns, coming around the curve and so forth, to be able to watch the game itself. But as for, there's going to be expensive seating that's going to be down there on the field itself. We know that's going to be taking place. There's going to be some seating down there, and I don't know who that's going to be open for, if it's regular season ticket holders that, at Bristol Motor Speedway, or they get a chance to set up in the stands themselves. But it's big. It's just, I mean, I can't say it any other way. It's big. And when you bring the bigwigs down from New York to start talking about this thing, they're really committed to seeing this thing happen. And, it might be the last big thing we see. The World Series might not amount to much this year. Who knows how that's going to go? But it might be the last big thing we see, because if Major League Baseball goes into strike mode, we could be a while without seeing some baseball. That's definite.
One other question. Any sense from Speedway officials how much money is being put into all that work you're talking about? Not, I mean, there's the tear down of the track, so to speak, getting ready for the game, and then tear down from the game, getting ready for the next race. Any sense how much all this is costing?
I'd have to find out. They haven't really talked too much to me about it. I talked a little bit to the coordinator of communications with Bristol Motor Speedway about just what all is going to be going on with this, and he didn't indicate anything about dollars. He just said, "We are at Major League Baseball's, hey, they tell us what to do about this. We've agreed to hold the event here. We've got to do the changes." I know that a lot of it has to be coming from Major League Baseball, because they brought in, I forget how many thousand tons of gravel just to put down for that elevation of that 4 feet. They've had to truck in clay, not from close by that they've used in the past on the racetrack when they had the dirt races, but they're bringing in clay from the state of Maine. They're trucking it down here to Bristol, Tennessee for this, to take place. In the infield, or I should say the rest of the playing field, is going to be AstroTurf, according to what Murray Cook told me.
Okay. And let me clarify, the MLB collective bargaining agreement expires after the end of next season,
Okay,
2026.
next season then. All right.
So we'll have baseball next year, and we'll have it after that. There's too much money to be made or lost if they don't. But the CBA expires on December 1st. The players expect a lockout after the World Series next year, which of course, I mean, a lockout after the season's over is really just semantics. But any case, so maybe we can have another Bristol game next year before any lockout may happen. So
Well, I did ask them that. I said, what's the possibility? And they said, this is a one-time thing.
okay, one time then.
This
Okay.
is going to be a one-time thing. I said, so you're not going to commit to coming back a second time? Nope. This is a one-time thing for right now. We may revisit it in the future, but we're not going to be holding back-to-back events here. So it's another one of those things that Major League Baseball is doing to bring baseball to the masses worldwide. I mean, whether it's London, whether it's Bristol, Tennessee, in Iowa at the Field of Dreams, wherever, that's what they're trying to do.
I would be curious, okay, if they have success with this, maybe not just Bristol. I thought came to mind when you were talking a minute or two ago, Rod, Daytona. Well, maybe a game there, or, and picking another historic venue in NASCAR because the synergy between the two sports. I mean, if I'm sure what MLB is thinking and what NASCAR is thinking is, and NASCAR is thinking, hey, we can get some MLB fans to get into racing, and MLB is thinking, hey, we can get some NASCAR fans to get into baseball. If you can, get not just the overlap, because there are plenty of people who like both. We like both. But, if you can pull some of the diehards from NASCAR who aren't maybe big baseball fans and say, hey, this is a cool thing. Well, next year we're going to be in Daytona, or next year we're going to be in Talladega. You
Right.
know, I mean, I would love to see, maybe not every year, but I'd love to see them try to do this kind of thing again if it's successful this year.
Yeah, I would too. I'd like to see it in some different places. Maybe a track that right off the bat might, surprise everybody. Like you said, a Daytona or a Talladega, something like that. But, I look at this whole thing, and of course, we know what the real reason out of this is all about. It's money. And Steve Phelps talked about it in the article too, about the importance of this road racing, road courses and so forth. And one of the things he did mention, and he kind of dangles this as a little carrot in front of you to say, hey, look what we're doing. Look, this is what we've done. And that is, he's talking about the number of tickets they sold at Chicago the past two seasons for the road race there at Chicago. Now, it's pretty much a gimme right now at this point. Chicago's not going to be back on the schedule next year, so I don't know what's going to play out. They're probably looking at other venues, but you've got that. You have with this thing of Major League Baseball, you've got the thing of Amazon. Steve Phelps and them. This is already telling me a tale. This could be before it's over with. If everybody gets tuned in on the same frequency with this, NASCAR could be on Prime before it's over with. And I mean, it could be as a regular home for racing because they've had over a million views, I think, within just a few minutes of each one of the races, and they hold at about 1 million viewers each time. And I think they're looking to hold on to it. And even though Prime is finished this week, finished last week at Pocono, most of the in-booth broadcast team, which is Adam Alexander, Steve Letarte, Dale Earnhardt Jr., they're going to be making their switch over to TNT, and they are going to be carrying the next set of races here leading up before NBC carries them, and then NBC will have Lee Duffy and the rest of the gang there as well. I think the only big change out of this is Larry McReynolds. He kind of set out, wasn't in the Amazon coverage. He had been with Fox. He's going to be actually making a transition over to TNT as well, and so he'll be helping out. So hey, that gives it a little bit more of a little strong professional flavor there, because I don't know about you, but people have been talking about Carl Edwards and Trevor Bayne and how well this whole team together gelled in just 5 races, and that they changed the way that we look at motorsports. And I have to agree, it did change the way that I looked at NASCAR, and I said, well, leave it to Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and Prime. They'll do something with it, and they'll make sure it comes out as a success, and it did.
And Jeff Bezos, his rockets don't explode either, unlike Elon Musk. So thank God Twitter didn't get the contract, or we
But he
would
is
be
getting
looking.
married. He is getting married, I think, this weekend, correct?
Didn't he? This is how much some people have way too much money. He rented the whole city of Venice.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think billionaires and trillionaires need tax cuts.
No.
But as we're that was a great discussion of the Steve Phelps issues, though. A lot of business issues there in NASCAR. As we wrap up, let's talk about real quick about Atlanta and what we can look forward to. You mentioned already the broadcast move over to TNT Sports, so a little bit of a change there. What can we look forward to on the track?
Well, what we're going to look forward to is tonight, Friday night, there's going to be a Xfinity race. They'll be racing there at Echo Park Raceway. Now they've changed the name. Echo Park has purchased the naming rights for Atlanta Motor Speedway, and so Echo Park now is what it's going to be referred to. The Xfinity Series will be racing tonight, and then the Cup Series will be racing tomorrow night under the lights, Saturday night, which is always a good thing when you have those Saturday night races. People love Saturday night races. They do on the local front. They love to come out to the local races when there's some good racing taking place. And Atlanta will be another one of those places, especially I think that's geared for that night race and that night race excitement, because these drivers have compared this to a kind of a shortened Talladega, a super speedway almost in and of itself. And it begs to wonder who's going to win this Cup race. Who's going to be there for the Cup race. A lot of people will be expecting Christopher Bell to kind of rebound back from a few bad races that he has had. They'll look for local favorite Chase Elliott to be in the mix for this. Chase Elliott has been consistent, at least on the whole sport, for the entire year so far, but he's not really came away with anything that they can really brag about, saying, hey, look, we're in the playoffs, we're going to be going into the playoffs, or anything. So a lot of things could change this week. I know that the Hendrick camp has had some trouble. Byron had some trouble last week at Pocono. So anybody's guess right now at this point. We could see a Kyle Busch victory. Kyle Busch has ran well at Atlanta before, but he's also bad-mouthed to places, saying it's terrible track, but he has also praised it since they resurfaced it and they did all these great things to it. So it's anybody's game this coming Saturday night at Atlanta. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen with that.
Very good. As always, Rod, good thorough analysis. Thank you for your time, your insight, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.